The grand ballroom of the Riverside Music Hall sparkled under crystal chandeliers. Women in elegant gowns and men in tuxedos filled every corner, their laughter and conversations creating a buzz of excitement. Tonight was special. The annual charity gala brought together the city's wealthiest donors and music lovers, all gathered for one reason: to see him perform. Daniel Frost. The name alone made people stop and listen. At just 28 years old, he had already played in the most famous concert halls across Europe and America. Critics called him a genius. His recordings sold millions. When his fingers touched piano keys, magic happened. But there was something else people knew about Daniel Frost. He didn't suffer fools. He had no patience for mistakes. And he certainly had no time for anyone he considered beneath his level. Daniel arrived fashionably late, as always. His black Mercedes pulled up to the venue's entrance and immediately cameras flashed. A small crowd had gathered outside, hoping for a glimpse of the famous pianist. He stepped out, his designer suit fitting perfectly, his dark hair styled just so. He didn't smile much, but he didn't need to. His presence alone commanded attention. Inside, the organizers rushed to greet him. The event coordinator, a nervous woman named Patricia, practically tripped over her own feet trying to make sure everything was perfect. "Mr. Frost, we're so honored you could make it. Your dressing room is ready, and we've arranged everything exactly as you requested." Daniel barely acknowledged her, his eyes scanning the room with that familiar look of someone assessing whether things met his standards. "The piano?" he asked, his voice cool and measured. "A Steinway Model D, just as you specified, tuned this morning by the best technician in the city." "We'll see about that," Daniel replied, already walking toward the stage area. Meanwhile, near the entrance, a completely different scene was unfolding. A yellow taxi had pulled up, and an elderly woman carefully helped a teenage girl out of the back seat. The girl moved slowly, one hand holding a white cane that swept gently across the ground in front of her. Her other hand gripped the woman's arm. This was Lily Chen, 17 years old, and her piano teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez. Lily wore a simple blue dress, nothing fancy, nothing that would draw attention. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and behind her dark glasses her eyes saw nothing but darkness. She had been blind since she was 5 years old, when a sudden illness took her sight in a matter of weeks. "You're going to be wonderful tonight," Mrs. Rodriguez said softly, squeezing Lily's hand as they entered the building. Lily's stomach churned with nerves. "Are you sure this is a good idea? I mean, this is a really big event. These people came to see Daniel Frost, not some nobody like me." "Stop that right now," Mrs. Rodriguez said firmly but kindly. "You earned your spot in tonight's program. When I submitted your audition recording, the committee selected you based purely on your talent. They didn't know anything about you except what they heard. And what they heard was beautiful." Lily had been playing piano since she was 6 years old. After losing her sight, her parents desperately searched for ways to help their daughter find joy again. Music became her salvation. While other kids were outside playing, Lily spent hours at the piano, learning pieces by listening to recordings over and over, her fingers memorizing every note, every rhythm, every subtle change in dynamics. She couldn't read sheet music anymore, of course. Everything had to be learned by ear and committed to memory. It was harder this way, much harder, but somehow it also made the music more alive to her. She didn't just play notes, she felt them, lived inside them, became part of them. As Mrs. Rodriguez guided Lily through the crowded reception area, people glanced their way. Some looks were sympathetic, others were curious. A few seemed uncomfortable, as if they didn't quite know how to react to seeing a blind girl with a cane at such an upscale event. The reception hour dragged on. Lily sat in a chair near the wall, listening to the conversation swirling around her. She heard people talking about stock portfolios and vacation homes and which restaurants had earned Michelin stars. It was a world she didn't belong to, and she knew it. Mrs. Rodriguez had left her briefly to check on the performance schedule. Lily sat alone, her cane resting against her knee, when she heard footsteps approaching. Several people talking loudly. "Did you see his car? That's a $200,000 vehicle minimum. I heard his last tour earned $30 million. My daughter takes piano lessons and she worships him. We paid $500 for her to attend his masterclass last summer." The voices moved past her, following someone. Lily realized they were talking about Daniel Frost. More footsteps followed, more excited whispers. Everyone wanted to be near him, to be seen by him, to maybe exchange a word or two they could brag about later. Then Lily heard a voice rise above the others. Cold, sharp, annoyed. Could everyone please step back? I need space. This isn't a meet and greet, that had to be him. Daniel Frost himself. Lily shifted in her chair, uncomfortable with all the commotion nearby. She reached for her cane to move to a quieter spot, but in her nervousness it slipped from her grasp. The cane clattered to the floor and rolled away. Oh no, Lily whispered, immediately dropping to her knees, her hands searching the smooth marble floor. Where did it go? Panic started to rise in her chest. Without her cane, without Mrs. Rodriguez nearby, she felt completely lost. She crawled forward slightly, her hands sweeping left and right. Then her shoulder bumped into something solid. Someone's leg, watch it! A man's voice snapped. Lily's face flushed with embarrassment. I'm so sorry, I dropped my... Are you seriously crawling around on the floor right now? At an event like this? The voice was full of irritation and disbelief. I dropped my cane, I can't see... Maybe you should have someone watching you then, the man interrupted. There was a pause. Then he added dismissively, this is exactly the kind of chaos I was worried about. Someone else must have picked up her cane because Lily felt it being pressed into her hand. But the damage was done. She could hear people whispering now, feel the weight of their stares. I'm really sorry, Lily said again, her voice barely above a whisper. She used her cane to help herself stand, her legs shaky. Is she part of the program tonight? She heard the man ask someone else. Yes, sir, she's performing in the open spotlight segment before your performance, came a nervous reply. That sounded like Patricia, the event coordinator. You're joking. The man's voice was flat, disbelieving. This is the Riverside Music Hall, not a community center talent show. Who approved this? The selection committee chose her based on her audition recording, Mr. Frost. They were quite impressed. Impressed, Daniel repeated, and Lily could hear the sarcasm dripping from that single word. Right. Well, I hope everyone enjoys the charity case portion of the evening before the actual music begins. The words hit Lily like a physical blow. Her throat tightened. Her hands gripped the cane so hard her knuckles went white. She heard footsteps walking away, taking the crowd with them, but the whispers remained, floating around her like ghosts. Did you hear what he said? That poor girl. I mean, he's not wrong, though. This is supposed to be a professional event. Do you think she's actually any good? Mrs. Rodriguez appeared seconds later, immediately sensing something was wrong. Lily, sweetheart, what happened? Lily couldn't speak. If she opened her mouth, she might cry, and she absolutely would not give these people that satisfaction. She just shook her head and let Mrs. Rodriguez guide her toward the backstage area. As they walked, Lily made a decision. She had been nervous before, worried about making mistakes, afraid of not being good enough. But now she was something else entirely. She was determined. That man, that famous pianist who everyone worshipped, he had looked at her and seen nothing, just an obstacle, an inconvenience, a charity case. He was about to learn something important. You should never underestimate someone just because they're different. And you definitely shouldn't insult them before they've had a chance to show you what they can do. Lily's fingers flexed at her sides, already imagining the keys beneath them. Tonight wasn't about proving herself to the selection committee anymore, or even to the audience. Tonight she was playing for every person who had ever been dismissed, overlooked or judged before they even had a chance. Tonight, she was playing for herself. The backstage area was quieter, but Lily could still feel her heart pounding in her chest. Mrs. Rodriguez led her to a small room where performers could wait before going on stage. The older woman helped Lily sit down on a cushioned chair, then knelt in front of her, taking both of her hands. Tell me what happened out there, Mrs. Rodriguez said gently. Lily's jaw tightened. For a moment she couldn't find the words. Then slowly everything came spilling out. The dropped cane, bumping into Daniel Frost. His cruel words about charity cases and community-centered talent shows. The way people whispered afterward, some agreeing with him, others just feeling sorry for her. He doesn't think I belong here, Lily finished, her voice shaking slightly. And maybe he's right. These people paid huge amounts of money to see him play. They didn't come here to watch some blind girl stumble through a piece. Stop, Mrs. Rodriguez said firmly. Listen to me very carefully. That man out there might be famous. He might have played for presidents and royalty. But you know what? He's forgotten something important. Music isn't about being the best or the most famous. It's about connection. It's about feeling. And you have more of that in your little finger than he has in his entire body. But what if I mess up? What if I prove him right? Mrs. Rodriguez squeezed her hands. Then you mess up, so what? But I've heard you play that piece 100 times, and you know it better than you know anything else. You're not playing for him. You're not even playing for that audience out there. You're playing because music is who you are. It's how you see the world, even though your eyes don't work. Don't let some arrogant man take that away from you. Lily took a deep breath, then another. Mrs. Rodriguez was right. She had worked too hard, practiced too many hours, poured too much of herself into her music to let one person's words destroy her confidence. But still, the fear remained. What if she wasn't good enough? What if everyone laughed? Outside in the main hall, the reception was winding down. Guests were finding their seats, settling in with glasses of wine and champagne. The lights dimmed slightly, and Patricia walked onto the stage with a microphone. "Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our annual charity gala," she began, her voice bright and professional. "Tonight, we have a very special program for you. As you know, our main performance will feature the extraordinary Daniel Frost, who has graciously donated his time and talent to support our music education programs." The audience applauded enthusiastically. Near the front, Daniel sat with his arms crossed, barely acknowledging the applause. His agent sat beside him, scrolling through emails on his phone. "But before Mr. Frost's performance," Patricia continued, "we have a tradition at these galas. We feature one emerging musician selected by our committee from dozens of audition submissions. This year's selection was unanimous. Please welcome our special guest, Lily Chen." The applause that followed was polite, supportive even, but it lacked energy. People clapped because it was the proper thing to do, not because they were excited. Several audience members were still chatting quietly with their neighbors. A few pulled out their phones to check messages, figuring they had a few minutes before the real performance began. Backstage, Lily heard her name called. Her stomach dropped. This was it. No turning back now. Mrs. Rodriguez walked with her to the stage entrance, then hugged her tightly. "Remember, you're not doing this for them. You're doing this for you. Now go show them what real music sounds like." A stagehand took Lily's arm and began guiding her onto the stage. The walk felt endless. She could hear the polite applause fading, replaced by the rustling of programs and quiet conversations. Someone coughed. She heard the click of a phone camera. Then she felt the whispers. Not words she could make out clearly, but the tone was unmistakable. Pity, awkwardness, uncertainty. She could almost hear what they were thinking. "Oh, the poor thing. This is going to be uncomfortable to watch." The stagehand helped her to the piano bench. "3 steps forward, then you'll feel the bench behind your knees," he whispered. Lily moved carefully, found the bench, and sat down. She adjusted her position slightly, then reached out to touch the piano keys. They felt cool and smooth under her fingertips. For a moment, she just sat there. The audience waited. Someone in the back coughed again. She heard more whispers, a nervous giggle from somewhere in the middle rows. In the front section, Daniel leaned toward his agent. "How long is this going to take?" he muttered, not bothering to lower his voice much. "I should be warming up right now, not sitting through amateur hour." His agent glanced around nervously. "Just a few minutes, I'm sure. Try to look supportive. There are cameras here." Daniel rolled his eyes but said nothing more. He did, however, shift in his seat impatiently, making sure everyone around him noticed his displeasure. On stage, Lily positioned her hands over the keys. She had chosen to play Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. The piece was personal to her in ways she had never fully explained to anyone, even Mrs. Rodriguez. Beethoven himself had been going deaf when he composed some of his greatest works. He knew what it was like to lose something precious, to have people doubt you because of your disability, to have to fight twice as hard to be taken seriously. Lily had discovered the Moonlight Sonata when she was 13. The moment she first heard it, something inside her recognized it. The melancholy beauty of the first movement, the gentle, almost fragile middle section, and then the explosive, passionate finale that seemed to rage against everything unfair in the world. This piece understood her, and she understood it. But now, sitting in front of hundreds of people who didn't believe in her, with the famous pianist who had humiliated her watching from the audience, Lily felt her confidence waver. Her hands trembled slightly above the keys. What if she forgot the notes? What if her fingers slipped? What if everyone laughed? She heard more whispers, felt the weight of all those eyes on her, some pitying, some bored, some already judging. Then, in the darkness behind her closed eyes, Lily heard Mrs. Rodriguez's voice in her memory. Music is how you see the world, and suddenly something shifted inside her. The fear didn't disappear, but it transformed into something else. Determination, defiance, courage. She didn't need to see these people to play for them. She didn't need their approval or their pity. She had her music, and that was enough. More than enough. Lily took one more deep breath, and then her fingers touched the keys. The first notes of the Moonlight Sonata floated into the air. Soft, haunting, beautiful. The opening movement begins quietly, almost like a whisper, each note carefully placed, each phrase delicate as glass. At first, the audience barely changed. A few people were still whispering to each other. Someone in the back was definitely on their phone. Daniel Frost sat with the same bored expression, waiting for this interruption to end. But then something began to happen. Note by note, measure by measure, Lily's playing started to fill the room in a way that couldn't be ignored. She wasn't just playing the notes correctly. She was breathing life into them, pouring emotion into every phrase. Her right hand carried the melody while her left hand provided a steady rolling accompaniment. The piece moved forward like waves on a dark ocean, peaceful but somehow deeply sad at the same time. Lily's whole body swayed slightly with the music, completely lost in the world of sound she was creating. The whispers stopped. The phone screens went dark. People who had been slouching in their seats sat up straighter, leaning forward slightly. Something in Lily's playing demanded attention without asking for it. In the third row, an elderly woman who had attended concerts for 50 years felt tears prick her eyes. She had heard the Moonlight Sonata performed dozens of times by famous pianists around the world. But there was something different about this. Something raw and honest that most professional performances lacked. A businessman who had been checking stock prices on his phone lowered the device and actually listened. Really listened, perhaps for the first time in years. A teenage girl who had been dragged to the event by her parents forgot about being bored and found herself holding her breath. Afraid to break the spell, even Daniel's agent stopped scrolling through emails and looked up at the stage. The first movement ended, and Lily moved seamlessly into the second. Her fingers danced across the keys with increasing confidence now. No longer trembling, no longer uncertain. She was home. This was where she belonged, not in this fancy hall necessarily, but in the music itself. In that place where sound becomes feeling, where notes become truth. The audience sat in complete silence now. Every ear was focused on the stage. Every eye watched this young woman who couldn't see them but was somehow showing them something they had forgotten how to see themselves. And then Lily began the third movement. The presto agitato, the storm after the calm. Her fingers flew across the keyboard with breathtaking speed, racing up and down in furious scales and arpeggios. The gentle sadness of the opening movements gave way to something fierce and powerful. This was anger and passion and determination all wrapped together in cascading waves of sound. Her hands moved with perfect precision, even at this incredible speed. Not a single note missed, not a single hesitation. She navigated the piano's entire range, from the deepest bass notes to the highest treble, and every note rang true. In the front row, Daniel Frost's expression slowly changed. The boredom vanished. The dismissive smirk disappeared. His eyes widened slightly as he leaned forward, watching Lily's hands move across the keys. His trained ear heard every nuance, every subtle dynamic change, every perfectly timed phrase. This wasn't just good playing. This was exceptional playing. This was the kind of playing that couldn't be faked or forced. It came from somewhere deep and real. Lily's fingers raced through the final pages of the third movement. The music was no longer just sound. It had become a living, breathing force that filled every corner of the hall. Each rapid-fire note struck with absolute clarity, building toward something bigger, something that felt almost inevitable. The audience had completely forgotten about everything else. The elegant dresses, the expensive jewelry, the business deals they had been discussing during cocktails, none of it mattered anymore. In this moment, there was only the music and the young woman creating it. Daniel's agent had put away his phone entirely. He sat frozen, his mouth slightly open. He had attended hundreds of concerts, heard countless pianists, and knew talent when he heard it. This was talent. Raw, Undeniable, extraordinary talent. But Daniel himself was experiencing something deeper than professional recognition. As he watched Lily's hands fly across the keys, something twisted uncomfortably in his chest. Shame. He had insulted this girl less than an hour ago. Called her a charity case. Dismissed her before she had even played a single note. And now she was proving him wrong in the most powerful way possible. Not with words, but with music that spoke louder than anything he could say. He thought about his own journey to becoming a famous pianist. The prestigious music schools, the private tutors, the expensive instruments his wealthy parents had provided. Every advantage money could buy. And here was this blind teenager who had learned to play without even being able to see the keys, creating something that was making his own carefully crafted performances feel somehow empty in comparison. On stage, Lily drove toward the finale. The piece builds and builds, getting faster and more intense until it reaches a climax that feels like a thunderstorm breaking. Her entire body moved with the effort now, her shoulders rocking slightly, her head tilting back. Sweat formed on her forehead. This wasn't just technical skill. This was physical, emotional, spiritual. Everything she had poured into this moment. The melody climbed higher and higher, each phrase more urgent than the last. Her left hand pounded out deep, rumbling bass notes while her right hand scattered brilliant runs across the upper register. The two hands worked together in perfect coordination, creating a complexity of sound that seemed impossible for one person to produce. In the audience, people were leaning so far forward in their seats they were almost standing. Nobody blinked. Nobody breathed. They were all caught in the spell Lily had woven, pulled along by the current of her playing toward whatever shore she was heading for. And then, with a series of powerful descending chords, Lily struck the final notes. The last chord hung in the air, resonating through the concert hall, vibrating in people's chests. She let it sustain, her foot pressed on the pedal, allowing every last bit of sound to fade naturally into silence. Then nothing, complete and total silence. Lily sat at the piano, her hands still resting on the keys, her chest rising and falling as she caught her breath. She had given everything she had, left it all on that stage. For a moment she felt completely drained, emptied out, and in that silence doubt crept back in. Had she made mistakes? Had she played too fast in some sections? Maybe people hadn't liked it. Maybe the silence meant they were too embarrassed for her to even clap. The seconds stretched out. 3 heartbeats, 4, 5. Then, like a dam breaking, the entire audience exploded. People leaped to their feet so fast some of them knocked their chairs backward. The applause wasn't polite anymore. It was thunderous, deafening, mixed with shouts and cheers and whistles. "Bravo," someone yelled from the balcony. "Brava," others corrected using the feminine form. Lily's head snapped up in surprise. She couldn't see what was happening, but she could hear it, feel it. The sound of hundreds of hands clapping filled her ears. The vibration of feet stomping on the floor traveled up through the piano bench where she sat. The cheers and shouts of appreciation washed over her like a wave. Mrs. Rodriguez was on her feet in the 3rd row, tears streaming down her face. She was clapping so hard her hands hurt, but she couldn't stop. Around her, people who had been whispering and doubting just minutes ago were now applauding, with genuine enthusiasm and amazement. The elderly woman who had heard countless performances had pulled out a handkerchief and was wiping her eyes. The businessman found himself clapping harder than he had in years, a huge smile on his face. The bored teenage girl was on her feet screaming, "Yes," like she was at a rock concert, instead of a classical music gala. Even the waitstaff, who had been preparing refreshments for intermission, had stopped what they were doing and were applauding from the doorways. Lily slowly stood up from the piano bench, still trying to process what was happening. Someone guided her to the center of the stage, and she bowed. The applause somehow got even louder. People were calling out to her, though she couldn't make out individual words in the roar of appreciation. She bowed again, tears now forming behind her dark glasses. These weren't tears of sadness or fear. They were tears of relief, of joy, of vindication. She had done it, not just played the piece correctly, but connected with these people in a way she had never imagined possible. Backstage, Patricia was grinning from ear to ear, clapping along with everyone else. The sound engineer gave her a thumbs up, mouthing, "That was incredible." The stagehands were applauding, too, something they rarely did, even for famous performers. The ovation continued for a full minute. Then another. People didn't want to stop. They wanted Lily to know how deeply she had moved them, how completely she had won them over. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the applause began to die down. Lily bowed one more time, then let herself be guided off the stage. The moment she stepped into the wings, her knees almost gave out. Mrs. Rodriguez was there instantly, catching her in a tight hug. "You did it, sweetheart. You were magnificent," Mrs. Rodriguez whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I have never been more proud of anyone in my entire life." Lily couldn't speak. She just held onto her teacher and let the emotions wash over her. All the fear, all the doubt, all the humiliation from earlier. It all melted away in the warmth of what had just happened. But in the audience, the atmosphere was changing. The applause had stopped and people were settling back into their seats. Now came the scheduled performance. The reason most of them had bought tickets in the first place. Daniel Frost was about to take the stage. Patricia walked back to the microphone, still beaming. "Wasn't that extraordinary? Let's hear it one more time for Lily Chen." Another round of applause erupted, though shorter this time. Patricia waited for it to subside, then continued. "And now the moment you've all been waiting for. Please welcome to the stage one of the finest pianists of our generation, Daniel Frost." The applause returned, loud and enthusiastic. But something had shifted in the room. Before Lily's performance, the audience had been ready to worship Daniel. He was the star, the genius, the whole reason for the evening. But now, after experiencing what they had just heard, their expectations had changed. They weren't just looking forward to technical perfection anymore. They wanted to feel something. They wanted to be moved the way Lily had moved them. Daniel stood up from his seat. He smoothed his jacket and walked toward the stage, but his usual confident stride was slightly off. For the first time in years, maybe for the first time ever, he felt nervous about performing. Not because he doubted his ability to play the notes correctly. He could do that in his sleep. But because he suddenly understood that playing notes correctly wasn't enough. Not after what they had just witnessed. He climbed the steps to the stage and walked to the piano. The same instrument Lily had just played. He sat down on the bench, still warm from where she had been sitting. The audience waited, ready to be impressed. Daniel looked down at the keys. He had planned to play Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, one of the most technically challenging pieces in the classical repertoire. He knew every note by heart, had performed it perfectly dozens of times in concert halls around the world. This should be easy for him. But as he sat there, his hands hovering over the keys, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Doubt. Not about whether he could play the notes. He knew he could. But about whether he could make anyone feel the way Lily had just made them feel. His mind flashed back to when he was 7 years old, just beginning piano lessons. Back then he had loved music for its own sake. He would spend hours at the piano, not because anyone made him, but because he wanted to, because the music made him happy. Because it felt like magic. When had that changed? When had music become about competition and perfection and being better than everyone else? When had he stopped playing with joy and started playing to prove something? The audience was waiting. Daniel placed his fingers on the keys and began to play. Technically, it was flawless. Every note perfect, every phrase precisely executed. But something was missing. He could feel it, and worse, he could sense the audience feeling it too. They clapped politely when he finished. They appreciated his skill. But there were no tears. No spontaneous shouts of bravo. No standing ovation. Just polite, respectful applause for a technically perfect but emotionally distant performance. Daniel bowed and left the stage, his face carefully neutral. But inside, something had cracked. That blind teenager had just taught him a lesson he desperately needed to learn, and the pride that had defined him for so long was beginning to crumble under the weight of that realization. The reception after the performances felt different than before. People clustered in small groups, champagne glasses in hand, but the conversations had changed. Everyone was talking about Lily. About her performance, about how they had never heard anything quite like it. Did you see her hands moving? Incredible speed. And she memorized the entire piece, every single note. I've heard the Moonlight Sonata 100 times, but tonight it felt brand new. My daughter has been taking piano lessons for 6 years and I'm going to tell her teacher about this. That's what music should sound like. Lily sat in a quiet corner with Mrs. Rodriguez, overwhelmed by everything that had happened. People kept approaching them, wanting to congratulate her, to shake her hand, to tell her how much her playing had moved them. She tried to be gracious, to thank everyone, but the attention was exhausting. She wasn't used to this. She just wanted to play piano, not be the center of attention. "Can we leave soon?" Lily whispered to Mrs. Rodriguez during a brief moment when no one was approaching them. "Soon, sweetheart. But people want to celebrate you. Let them do that for a little while longer." Across the room, Daniel stood with his agent, but he wasn't really listening to anything the man was saying. His eyes kept drifting toward where Lily sat. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. After his own performance, a few donors had approached him to shake his hand and make polite comments. But the energy was nothing like what Lily was experiencing. People had applauded his technical skill, sure, but no one had been moved. No one had tears in their eyes. No one seemed changed by what they had heard. His agent was going on about upcoming tour dates and contract negotiations, but Daniel finally interrupted him. "I need a minute," he said abruptly, and walked away before his agent could respond. Daniel found himself wandering toward the backstage area, away from the crowds. He needed to think, needed to process what had just happened. In his entire career, he had been the best, the star, the one everyone came to see. But tonight, a 17-year-old, blind girl had shown him what real music was supposed to sound like, and the realization was crushing. He ended up in the green room, the same small space where Lily had waited before her performance. He sat down heavily in one of the chairs and put his head in his hands. For several minutes, he just sat there in silence. Then he heard voices in the hallway. Mrs. Rodriguez was speaking. "Just wait here for a moment, dear. I need to find Patricia to arrange our ride home." "Okay," came Lily's quiet reply. Footsteps retreated down the hallway, and Daniel realized Lily was standing just outside the green room, alone. He stood up slowly and stepped to the doorway. "Hello," he said softly. Lily's head turned toward his voice, and he could see her body tense slightly. She recognized his voice. Of course she did. It was the same voice that had called her a charity case just a few hours ago. "Hi," she said carefully, her hand gripping her cane a little tighter. Daniel took a breath. This was harder than playing any concerto. "I was hoping I might talk to you for a minute, if that's okay." Lily didn't respond immediately. She just stood there, her expression guarded. "I understand if you'd rather not," Daniel continued. "After what I said earlier, you have every right to tell me to leave you alone, but I'm asking anyway. Please, just 1 minute." There was a long pause. Then Lily nodded slightly. "Okay," Daniel gestured to the green room, then realized how stupid that was. "There's a room right here to your left, about 3 steps. Lily moved forward carefully, and Daniel watched as she navigated the doorway with practiced ease. She found one of the chairs and sat down, her cane resting against her knee. Daniel sat across from her, suddenly unsure where to start. "I owe you an apology," he finally said. "What I said earlier was cruel and completely unfair. I judged you before you even had a chance to show what you could do. And I was wrong. Not just a little wrong. Completely, totally wrong." Lily's expression didn't change. She just sat there listening. "I've been playing piano since I was 4 years old," Daniel continued. "Had the best teachers money could buy, went to the most prestigious music schools, won every competition I entered. And somewhere along the way, I forgot why I started playing in the first place. I forgot that music is supposed to mean something. It's supposed to come from somewhere real." He paused, trying to find the right words. "Tonight, when you played, I heard something I haven't heard in a long time. Maybe something I've never really heard. You weren't just playing notes, you were sharing a part of yourself. And everyone in that room felt it, including me." Lily's jaw tightened slightly. "You played perfectly tonight. Everyone knows you're talented." "Perfect," Daniel repeated, and there was something bitter in his voice. "Yeah, I played it perfectly. Hit every note exactly right, but you know what? Nobody cared. Not really. They clapped because they were supposed to, because they paid money to be there. But they didn't feel anything, not like they did when you played. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. I've spent my whole career being the best, being better than everyone else. But you taught me something tonight. Being the best doesn't matter if you're not being real. And I haven't been real in a very long time. Lily was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but firm. Music has always been about feeling for me. I can't see the audience. I can't read their expressions or know if they're bored or interested. All I have is the music itself and how it makes me feel. So I play from that place. I don't know any other way. That's exactly it, Daniel said. You play from that place because you have to. I used to play from that place because I wanted to. But then I started caring more about being impressive than being honest, more about winning than about connecting. He sat back in his chair. When I was a kid, maybe 7 or 8 years old, I would play for hours just because it made me happy. My parents would have to drag me away from the piano to eat dinner. I wasn't thinking about competitions or concerts or what critics would say. I was just playing because I loved it. What changed? Lily asked. Daniel thought about that. I guess I did. Or maybe the world around me did. People started telling me I was special, that I was gifted, that I could be great. And greatness became the goal. Not joy. Not connection. Just being the best and making sure everyone knew it. That sounds lonely, Lily said quietly. The words hit Daniel like a punch. Lonely. Yes, that was exactly what it was. He had achieved everything he had set out to achieve. Fame, wealth, recognition. But he was lonely in a way he had never really acknowledged before. It is lonely, he admitted. I've spent so much time trying to stay on top that I forgot to actually enjoy being there. And I definitely forgot to be kind to people along the way, people like you who were just trying to do their best. Lily tilted her head slightly. Why are you telling me all this? Because you deserve to know that you didn't just play beautifully tonight. You changed something, for me at least. And I wanted to thank you for that, even though I definitely don't deserve your kindness after how I treated you. Before Lily could respond, Mrs. Rodriguez's voice came from the hallway. Lily, you in there? Yes, I'm here, Lily called back. Mrs. Rodriguez appeared in the doorway and immediately tensed when she saw Daniel. Is everything all right? It's fine, Lily said. We were just talking. Mrs. Rodriguez looked between them, clearly protective of her student. Our car is here whenever you're ready. Lily stood up, using her cane to steady herself. She turned in Daniel's general direction. Thank you for apologizing, that took courage. It was the least I could do, Daniel said, standing as well. Then, before he could talk himself out of it, he added, Would you be willing to play again sometime? With me, I mean. A duet, maybe. Lily looked surprised. A duet? I know it's a lot to ask, but I think I could learn something from playing with you, about how to make music real again instead of just perfect. Mrs. Rodriguez started to say something, probably to refuse on Lily's behalf, but Lily spoke first. What piece were you thinking? Daniel hadn't expected her to actually consider it. Maybe something by Schubert? The Fantasia in F minor is written for 4 hands. It's challenging but beautiful, and it requires 2 people to really work together, to listen to each other and blend. Lily was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then, to everyone's surprise, she nodded. Okay, I'd like that. Mrs. Rodriguez's eyes went wide. Lily, are you sure? He apologized, Lily said simply. And everyone deserves a second chance. Even famous pianists who say mean things. There was the tiniest hint of a smile on her face as she said it, and Daniel felt something loosen in his chest. Relief, maybe. Or hope. Thank you, he said. Really. Thank you. I'll have my people contact Mrs. Rodriguez to set something up. We can practice at whatever pace you're comfortable with. Lily nodded, then let Mrs. Rodriguez guide her toward the door, but she paused at the threshold and turned back. Mr. Frost? Can I tell you something? Of course. And please call me Daniel. Okay, Daniel. She hesitated, then continued. When I play, I imagine what I think the music would look like if I could see it, like colors and shapes and light. And tonight, when I was playing, I imagined something bright and warm, like sunrise after a really long night. Maybe that's what you need to find again, that sunrise feeling, the reason you started playing in the first place. With that, she and Mrs. Rodriguez left.